I have copies. We can, I mean, we can vote on next time.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
That's fine.
Given the time frame, I was driving on the road.
No. You know what? Yeah, no, I know.
I appreciate you getting prepared. We'll go ahead and table that item until next meeting, so everyone has ample opportunity to take at least a gander, including myself. So thank you for everybody for coming together. I'll get into the chairman's report. So as you know, we did have a final presentation to the council, what I'm considering our final presentation, and many of you participated. I appreciate that. It's good, I think, for the council as a whole to hear the committee, not just one voice, but many voices talking about the project. I did have a subsequent conversation, and we'll be talking a little bit about the recent council meeting, which they discussed the bond. But I did have a conversation with Dr. Dixon following the council meeting, the most recent council meeting. And, you know, I believe in openness and sharing with the committee, because these are not my decisions to make. This is a committee decisions to make. So the correspondence I had was talking about the project, concerns over the council being, you know, able to get this over the hump and having the votes. In general, there are definitely concerns expressed at that meeting that are concerning to me, and I'm sure they're concerning to you. There was a discussion had. She asked me to go back and evaluate, talk to the SBA about a smaller project. My response to that was I felt that the committee has looked at a smaller project, voted that down, and that the council needs to vet the project as presented before we move forward with any other option. So, you know, that the $89 million project that we put forward as a committee, it's respectful as a committee to look at that project and vote on it, up or down. If it's positive, then we move forward. If it's not, then the council can certainly provide some additional direction to us on what would be affordable or appropriate based on what rationale, I don't know. And then we could go from there. I did commit that I would talk to Mario about it, which I did over a couple of days because we got interrupted multiple times during that conversation. But essentially, they're of the same opinion. We need to run out the option that was approved by RIDE under our stage 2. That is what needs to be considered by council. If it gets voted down, they said there have been situations in the past where they made accommodations, but there's no guarantees. So, and we have a very limited time frame. The vote that I believe is still slated for the 20th on the larger project as presented. If it goes down, we're in the middle of the holidays. So we have Christmas and we have New Year's. I told Dr. Dixon that my expectation would be the drop dead date may be January 15th. That may not even be the drop dead date because I think our discussion with Karen and will be Karen really as bond counsel.
Yeah.
And the board of canvassers, which I haven't had time to reach out to, is what is the backup date for something to be on the ballot? How long will it be to be from the enabling legislation? And I haven't had a chance to even back up that schedule. So that is going to be critical because the real date may be early January, late December, in which case we may not have time to make up. So my feeling at this point, and certainly going to listen to the committee tonight on your opinions, that the project as we presented, we already voted the smaller project down. I thought I was being very accommodating, trying to bring it to the committee and say, hey, you know, here's maybe what this looks like. The overall consensus was that that wasn't the direction to be going. I have also had some talks with Phil and Sam about the project. Peregrine wanted to know if we wanted to continue on with the architectural engineering RFP. I advised them to hold off until after the holidays. We looked at the schedule. We still feel confident that we will have time to go ahead and do the RFP. and get it out to market and have it all back by April 1st, even by waiting until after the holidays. But given the uncertainty, there's two reasons I advise not to do it. One is public perception of us jumping the gun, maybe seen as jumping the gun, trying to get an architect on board. Second is, quite frankly, personally, I didn't get a great feeling from the council meeting. And this was right after. So without having some certainty on the project, I don't want to go down a road only to completely either shift the scope or having to terminate all services and part ways. We have limited funds that I'm not interested in wasting school district money on this effort. Anyone have any questions on that? Phil, the substance of our discussion, I think essentially at this point is we're in a holding pattern a bit. However, marketing and whatnot, we still have to keep an eye on it because we're in limbo. We're gonna have to gear up really quickly if this doesn't move forward.
Can I just say something?
Sure.
I don't think we are in limbo. That's the thing is I think this group for 2 years and X number of months has been very clear. I'm disappointed, and and again, with present company excluded, and I'm not saying this, Kim, I watched the meeting and I thought you were extremely reserved, very articulate, conveying the point. But my concern, because just like the school committee, even though we have 2 members here, the school committee is a body. And I always say that I work for the school committee as a whole. I don't work for any member, even though I respect all the members, but I work for the body. And I feel like the council doesn't understand their responsibility, even with the school building committee, because they already went into individuals. Well, I want to know, I'm going to give a directive to Ms. Mills. I want her to figure this out when what's before them is really our finance plan. And I feel like even this negotiation conversations, again, you can do what you choose to do, but I know from my piece is that we've put forward a project, people have committed, we had that conversation here. People were adamant. I wish Dr. Dixon was here right now because I don't think she had no authority to go back and pitch the 40 million again. That's my feeling, is that this should have been just conversations, questions. I've watched, obviously the minutes. I had to watch all the meetings again. And it's very clear, even the questions that were asked when Ms. Mills came to the table, there was a lot of questions that were asked. And I still don't feel that, there was conversations about the questions and the responses. And I feel like, that's been kind of swept under the rug. And now it's just, there's a message, we can't afford this. And this is what we're going to do. And one of the council members hasn't even been in the middle school. Like I'm saying is I was there twice today. We just fixed the heat in Western. I feel bad for the community because these buildings, we talked about 25 years, even if we put the maintenance requirement. The bottom line is these buildings aren't going to last, some of them aren't going to last 5 years without major investment that we don't have in the, So I just feel like we've got to be solid. I'm only one person, but I feel like these conversations that are taking place shouldn't happen. I've been adamant about these small meetings. I don't want to be part of them anymore because they definitely don't work well for me. I come out of those meetings and I just alienate more people, right? And it's just, but I feel like I don't even live here. I'm a hired person, but I see what this community, what our teachers go through, what our students go through every single day. And I was walking in here with who? Mr. Resfall, we were saying this is what a new building looks like. We have nothing in our schools that looks like this. So I feel like we've got to get off this negotiating. And if the bond fails, if they don't want to put it forward, I'm going to say my prayers for them because these families will be, I can tell you this winter is going to be extremely challenging for us. Even though we're spending money, our buildings are old. The systems at Western, we barely, right? We have 6, 8, 10 classrooms that are barely hanging on there. And those, you know what I mean? It's just we've got this committee has been adamant and I don't think I've said anything different. I do want to get into the town discussion. I know you're frustrated. No, but the negotiation piece, that's my frustration is that we're still talking about if this, I think we've got to.
Well, so there's not negotiating going on. I was pretty clear that everything comes back to the committee. And I wasn't negotiating. Dr. Dixon called me. I believe there's an earnest effort to sell, in her perspective, to salvage the project. I agree with you that council speaks with one voice, just like school committee does, just like this committee does. Mm-hmm. So we all have responsibilities to bring information back, and it has to be a group discussion. So that's what I promised to do with the committee, and that's what I'm doing. You voted as a committee to the $89 million project. That is what I've instructed that we're going forward with. We're not considering anything else, period. So unless this committee decides somewhere along the line that they want to entertain something different, I'm not getting that feeling. So I just want to finish this up one last topic. As far as other communications, my feeling is that at this point, there have been communications, just so the committee knows that there's a meeting on Thursday that has been arranged by the Shockley
Yes,
or the town manager.
with the town manager.
With the
I
town.
asked for a meeting with, I guess Steve Massaroni is who we're gonna be meeting with, and then I also asked that Harold and Luke get invited to the meeting. Ann and I will be there, Lisa and Ben, so that we can all get our questions answered together in the same room and no one comes away with a different, it's not a game of telephone. I think there's been a lot of, please ask this question, did the question get asked? One group of people heard it one way, one group of people heard it another way. You know, whoever says numbers don't lie knows nothing about numbers, because it's not even that they lie, it's that you take how you would like to move forward and you can make the numbers say that. It's just how numbers work. But I will say, just in the defense of the council, I do not think there's a single member of that council that doesn't think we need this school.
I agree.
I also think that the town of Coventry has left us very nervous about the idea of putting forth a project that won't be immediately funded and having to depend on the voters of Coventry for the next few years to vote for our budgets so that we can pay for this one. So that's a concern. And another reason why I expressed some frustration, that there are questions such as, can we put this bond into the levy, into the legislation for the bond to make sure we're paying for it? This question has been being asked since I've been on this committee, and I don't have an answer for that. So neither does the rest of the town council. So they're all just looking at this large bond and the fact that 2 years ago we were level funded. And those two things kind of are scary to put together. Also, we are working through a strategic plan right now and trying to see, you know, town departments have been decimated over the years as well. We're trying to build forward. Another question for Thursday's meeting is, how will we open up more opportunities to bond for things in the future? You know, I'm fighting for this project. I set up this meeting. I want information before next Monday's meeting on the 13th. Also keep in mind, we have to ask most of these questions just at these meetings. You know, that's where we get our materials. That's where we're given our information. We all have full-time jobs, just in fairness. So I don't necessarily question, you know, some of what was said by council members I didn't agree with. For instance, you should have enough money in the bank to pay all your debt. That's not how debt works. You don't take out 25-year debt because you have the money to buy your house sitting in the bank. So just, you know, trying to make sure that people weren't thinking about it backwards. But I think sometimes you get locked into an idea and you're like, oh yeah, this is a good idea. I'm thinking about this right. And then you do kind of need someone to say, not 100%. So, you know, I'm trying to ask our questions and put out information publicly. I hope I am. I'm really hoping this meeting on Thursday will help me at least feel I understand what's being said, because I've felt in a lot of cases I'm getting different information from different people, which makes it harder for me to support the project because someone's like, no, you're not understanding that right. And for me, I've told you many times, it all comes down to paying for it. We need the school. I mean, in reality, what was Barrington, $68 million? And this school's about $74 million. So when you're comparing Barrington to Coventry Middle School, our bond isn't just for the middle school. Barrington's was 100% for the middle school. So, you know, things that we have to keep in mind. And we have a really large project because we've really let things fall apart. So
And I do want to, I want to thank Kim because she has been trying to at least, listen, I think all the committee really has wanted throughout this process is clarity and honesty in the answers, right? I think this committee has done everything we could. And actually taking it beyond that, Sam, after the last meeting, Sam Bradner, who's worked with many building committees, came out of that meeting, was like, I've never seen anything like this. From the financial analysis we did, through the explanation of the project, and we've done that not once, but multiple times. It is, I know it's extremely frustrating to sit there then after, have the same questions answered, questions asked and answered either in different ways, or it seems like there's still questions lingering. But this building committee was charged with creating what we felt was the best project, presenting that project and with support data. I feel like we've done that. So the last thing I'll just say on this topic as far as other school communication, other related communications, and I'm just saying this not to stir the pot, but many of you know I did assert put in an app request for the original spreadsheet. It was denied on the basis that it was not presented in a public forum. I looked up the video, it was presented in a public forum. It was documented, and so I asserted my right of appeal to the town manager. I'm waiting to hear back. The purpose of that really is to get the original spreadsheet and to ensure it aligns with ours. Because I always want to give people the benefit of the doubt. Maybe the town side is seeing something we're not seeing.
Wait, so that Excel sheet that we specifically asked for, we never got?
No, Harold rebuilt the entire spreadsheet off of what he could view. So kudos to him for spending hours and hours and hours rebuilding it.
Yeah, but didn't you two like specifically tell her to turn it over?
So I don't want to get,
I just was on.
but I just want people to say that is still out there. My hope is that we can get there. If we can't, there's a process for it. But I think at this point, we've presented a certain number of data, and my hope was throughout this process is like, prove me wrong, right? So if I present something and you think it's factually incorrect, what should be done is saying, okay, I think the building committee is wrong because of X. And I'm not sure that's happened. There's been a lot of web spinning and things, but I don't think there's ever been a forthright discussion, even after we presented the earlier spreadsheets.
Correct.
Why those spreadsheets are incorrect. And so I'm trying to work it out. So I'm putting that under communication because that is something that I'm working on personally as a resident, but it does benefit the committee if I do get that spreadsheet. If I don't, so be it.
I don't know if this falls under school building project communications, but if I were you guys, I'd start really sharing about this before the meeting on the 20th. I've had a lot of people reach out to me. Would I say a lot though? I mean like 10. About an $89 million project. So if people are interested in it, they should start reaching out to the town council and saying what, the concern is not everybody understands the cost analysis, but people are putting forth good information. John's wife reached out, she works at the middle school, and pointed out like the reason they built a new senior center is because of mold issue, or the police station, it's mold issues and issues that our students are having that we've made it so our incarcerated individuals don't need to deal with anymore. So I think it's a really good argument, for having the school. I think it's good that we built a new police station, but I think these arguments really hold water. And then there's just, people have to kind of be asked over time, if it's necessary, are you willing to give some things up in order to get to school? And I think a lot of people are, a lot of people aren't. But if people are really engaged and have feedback onto why we should build this school, they should be reaching out to us, including you guys. Like, let's hear from every single member of this committee individually as town council members, and your research and the work you've done. And there's a lot of backstory to this project. That's why members of the council were like, why wouldn't we do a $40 million project? It's because it wasn't a good project. This project has been being worked on for 2 years. If by January we're just cut it in half, I don't want to pay $40 million for that project. So if we're going to do a $40 million project, I want to work on it for a long time. I want to have a good, strong $40 million project that we've decided to go forward with, not okay, let's just cut a couple wings off the project that we made already. No, like I'm just saying, it wasn't the work and effort and kind of real forward thinking that went into this project. So if I'm gonna pay 40 mil, I want a good $40 million project, not a,
Well, but you never get
You
where
can't get
you
it.
want to go, right, with 40. So like, again, you mentioned
Agreed.
Barrington again, right, at 68, they finished
Mhm.
in 2019. So if you were to escalate those dollars, they're there now. Plus, they
I-
have like a 900 student population versus our 1,200. So every time I heard Ms. Mills kind of throw out this Barrington comparison, it was like they're apples to oranges. And if you were looking at it, well, but again,
I
it never,
agree with you.
it never
Check
kind of
it
came
out.
up again. It kind of came up in a meeting, so I didn't know how appropriate it was to kind of just throw out. But I mean, I
don't
kind
think
of.
People really worry much about that. I'd say throw it
No,
out
just-
there.
I will be, all right, so let's get more inappropriate. So you say the $40 million, right? So here's my problem with the $40 million. I would not have known this, not having been involved in this building committee, but there is not a project for $40 million that totally fixes any one of these school buildings. Coventry does not have a single school building that I think as a resident, you would walk in and be proud to have your kids go to. They don't. And cutting to a $40 million project does exactly what I think this town has been doing for years and puts like Band-Aids on certain pieces. And so you get to the point where Coventry never has that, because even 10 years from now, you're still not going to build a whole brand new school because you're going to have just put 20 million here or 10 million there. So we're going to continue what we have, which is these buildings, hodgepodge, little pods added on that don't align, that don't have any symmetry or fit. And doing that now like this, I really thought was the first big step to this brand new school. And then we looked down the road years later and we talked about, you know, consolidation, eventually a new school somewhere. But doing this now, I think this town never gets a brand new school in my lifetime living here, that never moves beyond that point of now we've already just did 40 million, so we'll do another 20 million. All right, we just did 20, now another 30 million, and none of those dollar values gets what we need, my opinion.
So before, I want to cut to the next topic, which I think we're already.
Please don't till I talk.
You're welcome to talk on the next topic. I just want to make sure that we stay, you go ahead. I just don't want, listen, I just don't want this to turn into the.
I know.
grievances.
All right, I want
Okay?
to,
This isn't justice.
okay,
So-
are you ready?
I want to make sure that what comes out of this meeting is some productive way. My feeling is, my personal feeling is that we are going to be deficient on funds. So we can talk and try to convince each other that it's a good project, or we can start thinking about ways to motivate council, which is our current hurdle, forward. So I just want to set that tone of tonight is about channeling that energy into solutions, because we have 2 weeks. We have very little marketing effort, and we have, I'm kind of like at my wits, because I'm tired of hearing the problems. I want to hear solutions. So sorry.
I
but
totally get that. I get that, but at this point, I wish the rest of the town council members were in this room right now, because everything that I have that I have made notes on that is stemmed for it is questions that came from that meeting, right? That the last town council meeting, just to hit on what Kim had just said about the dollar value, right? I didn't vote no on against a smaller project. I voted no against the smaller project that was presented, because I feel exactly the way Kim feels. I don't, and this is no offense to you, Phil, you're a short amount of time and it was, hey, split this project, what can we do? And
Split the baby.
right, and you came up with something, but we spent a long time hammering out this project, so I'm not opposed to a smaller project. But I can tell you, I'm not gonna spend time on figuring out what another project is unless town council can sit here and tell me, hey, we're all comfortable with this bond value. Because when I listened to that meeting, people sitting on the left through my camera are hung up on, what are we gonna do if something else comes into play? We're bonding for $89 million, that doesn't leave room for any what ifs. Well, then what are you comfortable with? What value is the town council okay with bonding to?
I understand what you're saying. That discussion should have taken place 2 years ago. And the discussion started off at 89 million with the interim town manager. So that's what was given out as a number. However, we are going to be discussing on the 13th, which is Monday night. We're going to be talking about what is the council willing to do? And a lot of factors are coming into play. So we're trying to understand the answer to that question. And I think it's a very important question. That question should have been at the beginning and not at the end.
And I disagree, though. I mean, I think this committee, this council, we did, and I feel that the council, this is my take, the council feels that they have power that they don't have. They can shoot this down, but I don't see a council. I see a bunch of individuals with their own ideas, thinking that they can arbitrarily, we don't, you have a council member who said, what if we need a new garage?
I understand.
Right.
I agree with
I'm
that.
just saying is that
And I don't disagree with what you're saying, Craig. I think some of the questions that came from the council members during that meeting were very much like, well, what are we gonna do about Tyo School? Like, we're not putting enough money there, we have to go back again to like, here's the project, here's the value. If we're pushing the $89 million project to, I stand behind that. I think this is the project. I will call Jen and email her until I'm blue in the face and tell her, please vote yes, because if not, like, this is not.
Email them all. You don't have to just email your.
And that's
Well,
the
my-
situation.
Right.
Christine,
Yeah.
I won't say the word instruction. My direction to Ben and Lisa is, we have the project, the only project before us is the $89 million project. What can be done to support this project? Do the numbers. So that's what they're going to do. Now, if the numbers don't work out and we don't know how the numbers are going to be, then there could be a discussion about some other possibility. But they're under instructions to find out, can this project be done? In addition to that, Kim suggested that we call in bond counsel, and bond counsel is coming in on Thursday. And Luke and Harold have been invited to participate with us as we talk to them to understand the situation better. So when we go to this meeting on Monday, we will have a lot more information available for people. All right. So when people say, what are we going to do about Tyoke School? That was coming from a person whose a school is in that district. So they're always, pushing for something that's happening in their district.
But that goes back to what Craig was just saying. We're talking about a project, not an individual preference. Like, if you wanted to have say,
No,
like, you should have sat in on these meetings.
No, I understand. I had a call from someone today, and I don't want to interrupt your meeting, but forgive me. But this person said, you're going down the wrong path. I said, what do you mean? He said, well, I think you should tear down the middle school and you should build 2 new schools, a middle school and a high school, east and west. I said, where did you come up with this idea? I said, have you gone to any of the focus groups that we've had? No. Have you listened to any of the council meetings? No. I don't have time for any of this. Then I had another email today. Don't you dare vote to support this bond. I mean, so I'm getting a couple of positives from teachers. 2 teachers called me. That's it. The only approach I've had from communications to a council person were 2 teachers who called. But, there are fragments of people out in the community who are contacting us, and they're half and half. I'll vote for it or I don't vote for it. So I think the communications is very, very critical, and we need to educate not only people on the council, but also people in the public so they better understand what it is. So even if the council voted yes, go to a referendum, they don't even know what's being presented. I thought most powerful was when Amy and Don was at the council meeting, and I'm sorry there was such short time but I mean, you were able to give eyewitness accounts, if I use that phrase, eyewitness accounts of what the situation is. And that was I think, very powerful information. And I don't think a lot of people even ever heard that presentation the way you did it. And that's what needs to get out to the public. It's the public putting pressure on the council and also on the council to be able to understand the situation and the need. And let's figure out how we make it work.
But I think they all do. And they've all sat up there and said, I understand that we need to do this, but they're so hung up on $89 million and it not leaving any room for any other what if. How do we get past
Well,
Yeah, with
we're trying
respect
to.
I will say, as far as the council not knowing the project, we had a dog and pony show here.
I
I've
know you
given
did.
over a dozen presentations. They approved the stage 2 for submission. This is not a new project.
It's not
And
a
we've
new
given
project.
An inordinate amount of information. to
Somehow
the
they
council.
have not, it has not
I
gotten
don't
into the
know how,
brain.
like, if it, and there's a 2,000-page document,
I
if
know.
they choose to read it. So I'm not trying to be crass, but at some point, they have to take some responsibility, understand the project that we have presented ad nauseam and absorb it, because it's an important decision. So from that aspect, now the community, I will agree, we need to get better. I think there's always been a hesitancy to put the cart before the horse, thinking that the decision before council was fairly simple. Are you going to put it to the voters to decide the priority, if this is a priority of the town or not? And what would seem like a relatively simple decision is getting very complex very quickly. You know, it's as I said to Jamie, this committee was not in charge of developing the CIP plan and answering every question to the town. But I think what is being missed, and we talked about this, the reason that this was put forth in the first place, the whole reason that we're here was a one-time bonus incentive that is running out. There is no other capital project that the town is going to come up with, and I think this needs to be driven home, that is going to pay more than half of the project. Not a road, not a building, not a garage, nothing. There is no state money coming for this project. So what the council really, and this is what I recommend to the committee, but we need to drive home, is that the taxpayers of this town are losing over $20 million in bonus incentives if we do this project in just 2 years from now. That's a fact. And it probably more because of inflation and everything else, but to keep it simple, they're losing over $20 million. If we do this in 5 years, it's even more. So I think that's the key factor to the council. If they're talking about money, they're thinking in terms of like the project. The whole point of this being such an expedited decision is really that incentive. And we talked about this as well. If the incentive isn't big enough for them to take that burden off the taxpayers, if they want to answer the question of why they're going to give that up and let other people take our tax money around the state, then they can answer that question, and then we'll be back here in 5 years talking about a project that could have cost us X, but now it's costing us.
I have a
So,
question, but I want to let Lee go
Yeah.
first.
Lee,
yeah.
you've
Thank
been
you.
waiting. I apologize.
Please don't interrupt me when I'm talking. 30 years ago, the call came out that they needed town people to get onto the Comprehensive Plan Review Committee. And they hired somebody from Phoenix, Arizona, a company from Phoenix, Arizona to come in. So I go to the first meeting and the council president says, oh, it's so wonderful that you all volunteered to do such an important thing for the town. This is really essential. The state was on everybody's case to update their comprehensive plan. And so we worked at it, and we worked at it for about 2 years. And we still, I found out that Eastern Coventry really needed sewers. At that point, they really needed sewers. They had cesspools that they were having pumped every week. What a terrible situation. So 2 years, and we're still reviewing it, and all of a sudden, I get the word that the town council is going to vote on the comprehensive plan going forward to the state. I go to the town meeting. I'm the only one in the seat. And they start talking about approving it. And I said, wait a minute. And they were all in our meetings. I said, wait a minute. You know that we've got other things we're still looking at. They were very smart politically. Well, what might those be? I didn't have a piece of paper with me. I don't have a notebook. And all of a sudden, a voice, one seat back from me, says, on this date, it was agreed that we would do this. And on that date, it was agreed that we would review that. And then the council member said, okay, Bob, you got it. And they stopped. They did not pass it. And I turned around and said to Bob Hebe, thank you very much, Bob. And Bob said, Lee, I think you'd make a good Republican. I said, you're in. So now, 30 years later, after this subcommittee completely refused, except for one person, turning down a $40 million bond that came out of nowhere, that somehow was presented to the school committee, I understand, and then presented to us. And I'm going, what the heck is this?
There was no school committee.
Okay, good. So all of a sudden, someone represents themselves as the subcommittee at the town council meeting and starts talking about a $40 million bond. I texted every council member in that meeting. Only one of them had the word shame 4 times in it. It was an embarrassment. It was terrible. We worked so hard. The problem is we've got kids walking through muck. We've got mold. We're spending dollars just to empty barrels of water. And the town council says, well, that's not a problem. Let's fix the elementary school. Where do they have the audacity to say that after we did a presentation to them saying, this is the project, this is what you're going to get in state reimbursement. Every time that finance director is asked a question, she taps her keyboard twice, and then she says, I don't have that information. Harold knows, and I did a spreadsheet program 45 years ago when I was retiring from the Air Force, and I said, how much life insurance does my wife need to support 4 kids and a house? And I did it on a Commodore 64, and every 3 years, the computer program would jam. So I understand spreadsheet, I understand cells. There are cells in her program that are wrong. And she refuses to have this finance committee come in. We can show her the cells that need to be corrected, and we can prove that it can be done.
Right.
On top of that, if I was the town council president, I would look at the town manager and I would look at the town finance director and I would say, you want to keep your job? Make this work. And I'll guarantee you, they will make it work. I know that Coventry is so screwed up. We had a municipal meeting. I couldn't attend. I was sick in bed. And municipal directors came in and presented wonderful ideas. They want to do more for the town of Coventry. And my question to myself was, the town council is responsible for the proper operation of the town. That's municipal and school. Where was school at that meeting to say, this is what we'd like to do in the school? Where's the representation? I think that the municipal side has received an additional $500,000 outside of the budget this year. Where's the $500,000 for the schools? Well, we have these accounts that we continue to find to solve our financing for the municipal side. Okay, municipal, you can do it. It is very, very upsetting to see the same political game played from 30 years ago. I love the town council. I love them all. I've loved them from the day they started doing the job. They have resolved so many issues that have been so long festering in this town. And every day there's 3 more that emerge. But I cannot think of one project greater than fixing the middle school that exceeds any other project that comes forward. And I defy them to show me one that will. My biggest fear is well, I'll stop.
So what
Thank
my
you.
ask of you is, how are you gonna turn that passion into something? We have.
Good, I'm gonna be at the meeting Monday.
So, show up for one. I think everyone we've already talked about this, send an email. I've sent plenty. They're sick of hearing from me. I guarantee you. And I get watered down. There's no doubt. My voice gets drowned out the more I'm there. But your voice isn't. They haven't heard it enough. And that includes the school committee. I'll be discussing this on Thursday night. Now's the time to coalesce and make your voice heard and make clear points. What do you want? What do you view as this project is important? So you have a lot of passion, it needs to be translated into action. And so that's what I need. That's what we need. Well,
One point of clarification, I as president did say to the manager and the finance director, I want you to do a number of scenarios to see what would work. Okay,
You did.
I did say
If
that.
they don't
I did-
fix the cells, then it won't work.
Okay.
They're gonna show you it won't work.
Both Kim and I have pointed out various areas where we would like some changes, modifications, et cetera. So we both have been working on this. Kim has been very active. We've got another meeting with bond counsel, and I insisted that Harold and Luke be invited to that meeting. So we were sharing that information. I know it was short notice, but we just got short notice ourselves about the meeting being set up. It's by Zoom, so people can attend. But I've said, work out various scenarios, see how it could work. So that's all we can do right now. That's all we can do, and we'll see what happens.
Who's the actual council?
Karen Granby.
Brandy could be included in the meeting on Thursday, or we could ask for her to be.
Ben has invited.
Oh,
people.
she is, because I saw.
No, I don't
Steve
know.
Massaroni.
Yes, he's the one that they invited.
Yeah, but he's just bond finance.
I think they feel
No.
that Karen could let us know if we could make the levy part of the legislation. That Karen might be a more appropriate person, so possibly even if we could just reach out to her.
I will send a note right now. Okay. We'll see.
Let's not let any stone go unturned, this is $89 million.
And I understand people's passion, but attacking us is not going to be valuable. I mean, because
And you have been helpful.
we're working our tails off to try to think about all different possibilities.
And in fairness, so my impression of that meeting was, I do agree. I think everyone I've talked to, and I've had meetings offline with every council person in the past, and I'm going to be offering to meet with them again to answer one-on-one any questions that they may have about the bond, keeping it very neutral. Because I always believe that quite frankly, I think the project sells itself with good information. I think I've never questioned council's integrity and position. I am concerned about the information provided and the lack of clarity on a lot of the questions which Kim, you've brought up. They've been asked again and again. And these are what's very frustrating for this committee, and I share the frustration is we're not really the authority to be answering the question. It should have been town all along answering these questions, and we've asked, but they've remained unanswered. And the inability to get the clear answers is extremely frustrating because we feel like it should be a partnership. And regardless, we both vet the project out and where it falls. And so the frustrating thing for me personally has been to ask questions and feel like, oh, well, on my lunch hour tomorrow, I'll call, Tom Moray. I'll call bond counsel if I can get access to them, or we'll work around and try to rebuild spreadsheets, and Harold's working on weekends, and that's not the way this should work. That's not how you get good information. So my hope is that the council can set a tone on the 13th. This is my perspective. We have specific questions that absolutely have to be clearly answered from a reliable source. And it needs to be answered, period. End of story. If it's not, somebody's going to be held accountable. Because you can't, I agree, the council cannot base the decision on insufficient information. It's not fair to them. And I know they're dealing with a lot of other things. And if the honest answer is based on the truthful information in front of them, they say, you know what? We just don't think it's in the best interest of the town. I can respect that. I think we all respect that. I think the tough thing has been to chew at this point. I can't speak for everybody, has been the constant questions, the sort of breaks in information, and that's created some of this animosity. That's my own opinion. And so my impression out of that meeting was it was more of the same, quite frankly. And what's even more frustrating is nobody asked, hey, the building committee showed a scenario that funded this at 1% with a reserve account by attributing the bond debt forward. That seems like it may be reasonable. Ms. Finance Director, why doesn't that particular scenario not work? You have the spreadsheet, which was provided to you by the building committee chairperson, including the entirety of the council, let's bring that up and see how we can shoot holes in it.
I think scenarios being put forward that was brought up. And that's why I want to get some of these questions answered, because I feel in certain instances I was told, well, you can't do that. I feel as if the other day I was told we cannot have a restricted reserve. Maybe I should go back to my meeting minutes, but I feel I was told that that actually wasn't something we could do. So that's why I want to verify we can. I've heard from my legal counsel tonight that yes, we can. So that way we can start putting money away immediately for large debt that's going to be coming forth in a couple of years. We still have to confirm, can we legally? Maybe the legislation will say no. Maybe they'll be like, no, you can't put a levy in this thing. But can we put the legislation forward with a levy attached to it and leave it up to them? I need an answer to that question. Like, I don't want an answer to that question. I need an answer to that question, because that answers the financing question for me. And as far as I'm concerned, as a council member, that's the only question I need answered. Because if the town gets this put in front of them and they decide, yes, this middle school is the most important thing to me, that's fine. That's what we move forward with. If they decide, nope, I want to be able to spend money on other stuff, I don't want to go this far into debt, that's fine too. But I can't let them say, we do want this project, and then have to say, well, we can't pay for it. You know, like, we need the payment part. So it's not this committee's job to put it forward, although until recently I didn't know. Like, because of how the project had been moving up until that point, I was like, it's their job. We're doing what we're supposed to do, getting all this financing information. But regardless, as a council that's trying to move the town forward, this is a humongous project while we're doing a performance audit and a strategic plan and a comprehensive plan. And it's like, this is weird. We're doing it all. The financing part for me is the only part that's up to the council. As long as you tell the council we can pay for this thing, I'm in.
But not us tell you we
Well,
can pay for this.
I
thing,
kind
right?
of
Is it
need my-
us, or is it?
Well,
There's some
have.
questions that are legal, but have you heard from legal counsel? Yes, we can definitely put this levy into your legislation. Because if you have,
No, because quite frankly, no offense to you, but we do not run the town solicitor, right? That should have been something asked long ago, and it was asked by me, should have been asked by me, but it was. And the answer back, and no offense, Dave, but I think there's still a question out there,
I do
right?
too.
I've read legislation, I work in municipal, I asked our own finance director and SK. My impression is there's a way to get it done. I think there's an extreme lack of creativity, personal perception on the town's part of making this work. The goal, I think we've all had, and we've recommended for months, was to have a funding mechanism that goes with the bond. All of us felt that that was the way to go. That's what we recommended. That's what I keep hearing from council, like that would be the preferred method. So why hasn't that been answered? It's been on the table for months. So I'm not, but it needs to be answered like yesterday.
Yeah.
And if I can chime in, so the part that I find a little bit confusing in a very simple form is when that spreadsheet came out with all those lines, all representing different years down the line, and talked about, 3% increase based on sort of their own assumptions, right? Because I don't know if we've ever done 3% increases in a bunch of years in a row, right? I can think of. It gets mingled in, so it sounds like the bond payment is contingent on a certain percent increase on the operating budget every year, but it doesn't really go that way. And I think a perfect example is we have bonds out right now, right, in the town. Some are schools, some are municipal, this building, right? They're out right now. We're paying for bonds right now. We just were level funded. At no point during the level funding conversation did somebody say, my goodness, how are we gonna pay for the senior center? My goodness, how are we gonna pay for the roofs and the activity fields at the high school? Like, how is that gonna get done? We just level funded because it was baked into the budget of the town, right?
Can you write that down verbatim and go on Monday and say that to the podium?
Because that's my question. Like, I don't think you should be mingling those two things together, because there are yearly votes, and the votes are on the operations of the community. Then there are things that we just have, there are obligations that we just have. And if a year comes where we don't meet a certain operation budget, it doesn't mean all our obligations suddenly can't be met. I think the community commits to an obligation, whether it's this bond or a different bond, you commit to an obligation, and then that is built into your budget for the years until that bond falls off. It's
I
not
think
up
I've
for.
said that during meetings.
Right, but the reason why I bring it up, Kim, is it keeps coming up, like somebody is, it's been said by town council people, like,
Yeah,
what
if-
happens if we're level funded?
Well
And I
done.
think that's because of that spreadsheet, and I
Yes.
think Kim has asked that question, she has
Right.
said the words, please divorce the bond
From
from the
Right.
municipal, and they won't,
Matter of fact,
Well,
Because
and even in
it
this-
looks much better for the.
because it looks like we can do it.
But Don, in answer to your question, we do have to pay our debts, and when we were level funded, the departments in the municipal side were slashed. So as you all know, in order to make up that deficit, the recreation department budget was slashed about in half. That meant that they were unable to put a manager down at the beach, the Briar Point Beach. It meant that they were not able to redo fields. I mean, there were a number of things that they needed to cut, which most of the public didn't notice. They don't know whether the grass fields have been fixed or not. They were not able to fix up the tennis courts. They had a whole list of things. So there were cuts, but I don't think the public understood that because we were level funded and there were cuts and we had to pay our debts like pensions, et cetera, there were cuts in all of the departments, but you just didn't notice it.
But Ann,
that's
can I,
not.
yeah, so I was just gonna, but that doesn't make sense to me. So like,
Right.
let's just say it's level funded. So this was what your budget is in 2019, and this is what it is
Right.
in 2020.
Right.
If you level fund it,
Yeah,
the only way that you have to slash things is if you're increasing, right? Because you should have the same exact expenditures, right? Because you have the bond and all of the things. So you either increase salaries or you increased something. And that's why you had to slash the 2020 budget a little bit to pay it. The bond didn't go up. It's still the same price. So something went up. Something went up
Yeah.
that made you had to cut this. It wasn't the bond.
take contractual obligations that you have.
Right, right.
So those,
I don't think you guys are disagreeing with each other.
Yeah, I think you're both.
I-
the same.
Right, I totally agree with you, but you can't say we have to pay our debts.
we
It
do.
doesn't, I
No.
understand that, but you would, if the price of running the town stayed exactly the
It
same
never
from
stays
two-
the same.
because,
You
right?
gotta give her a
because-
second, and she's
Right.
looking to-
she's trying.
I'm trying.
If it stayed the same.
Let's just say the price of running the town in 2019 stayed exactly the same
Yeah.
as in 2020.
Sure,
You could still pay your debts, your bonds and all of those things, and pay for the Briar Point and all of those things. But what happened is something went up,
yes.
electricity,
Pensions.
pensions,
Pensions.
but what didn't go up, Ann, was the bond. The bond is still built into that.
No, I
So
understand.
what you slashed in 2020 wasn't to pay your debts. It was to pay for all those increases. You don't have any more money to pay for those contractual things and for all of that. You have to slash that budget so that you can pay those increases, not the bond.
people
And
won't see that difference.
That's why I think it's being misrepresented. Because
I agree.
they're misrepresenting the
I'll
whole
make
piece
sure I
around the
speak to that
bond.
better.
The bond is the bond. When we approve a bond, it is financed and we pay it every year. It doesn't raise our taxes every year because we have a bond. It doesn't, it raises it one time and it's built into that budget. So to keep saying that it goes up 3% every year and we need that to be approved is so confusing to me.
Me too.
Why they say
It's the
that.
operations of the town.
No, it's-
increasing.
But
It's,
it's
but
not
if
even,
you
I
don't
think-
know it's 3% though, Ann, because
No,
we don't know.
I know, in the spreadsheet, it was a projection of
That
3%
spreadsheet
But it's
increase.
not a good projection because
Right.
not only.
It's
does-
How do
faulty.
I know how
It's
much next
faulty.
year's, how do I know how much next year's increase is going to be when I haven't built my budget for next year? You might know because some of contractual obligations, but you don't know all the pieces and the parts. But what you don't figure out when you're rebuilding the budget the next year is, how much is this bond going up? the bond isn't going up.
In December 20th, we are having a meeting because we are required by law to have the town give a projection, a 3-year projection of its revenues, and the school giving a 3-year projection of its expenditures. That's on the.
But then,
that
I
doesn't
agree,
have
but that
anything to
doesn't
do with the bond.
automatically say, what
but
is
it's
the
a-
correlation they have made on these spreadsheets? I'm just gonna say, as a person that doesn't know much about finance, when I sit there and listen, it's almost like they're saying, if you do this bond, you have to add 3% every
Every
single year
For 25
for
years.
25 years. And if somebody doesn't approve that, we don't have enough money to pay that debt. That isn't how a bond works, unless there's something that is brand new.
What was confusing to me is when I saw the 3%, I asked, is that just the operations increase for school and town, or does that include the bond?
But
Okay.
how would they know?
No, but I
that the
mean.
operations
Hold on, does it include the bond? Because my understanding is it
No,
does not.
So
include the bond.
here's to back up, when we did the fiscal health
Mm-hmm.
analysis, that was the same spreadsheet.
Yeah.
Not including the bond. 2.99 to 3% per year, which was what, 3.3 and
Yeah.
however they figured it out. A straight line increase every single year for operations only. And that included in
school.
the background, the CIP program and things that we currently do not have. I
Correct.
don't disagree with it. But to take that approach, which quite frankly, we've never had 3% year after year after year.
No.
You know, if you think that's the way this town's gonna run, I feel bad. for
That would
you.
be nice.
Yeah. I'm not saying it's, but there's a reality that needs to be drummed into that, but everyone is correct. This, and we presented it as such. I mean, I did a follow the bouncing the ball 2 presentations ago, which was like, this is what you need to build in. And actually it got better at the last presentation, because when we presented the last presentation, it was
We just
down to
used it,
1%, right?
Because
Well, we actually
we
used
use
the
them, we
spreadsheet.
use their spreadsheet.
So it is confusing. So I mean, that is the frustrating part, but what's the solution, right? So I
But
think we
Luke,
all
is there
need to
something we don't
communicate that
understand?
we feel that the spreadsheet is confusing and that the council's interpretation is maybe wrong. And that to go back, and I'll share the original slide I did 2 times ago saying, this is what you need to build in.
Can I ask?
How do you do that though? Like from the first time I ever sat in a room with Ms. Mills and anytime moving forward, I just get the distinct feeling that she's like,
So
yeah.
one thing to
So-
keep in mind is that she doesn't have, she's not a voting member.
No, I
There's a lot of
understand that.
influence.
I understand that she's not a voting member, but she is a person in theory by title, that if she says financially you can't do it,
Right.
then to your point, as council, as citizens, I'm no fool.
Great.
As a person who wants this
Then
project,
we're heading down the
if the
road of South
numbers
Kingstown,
can't
right?
do it,
People-
then we
She
can't
Open
do
has,
it.
it.
she has been
If I had
told,
this project as K, it would pass. because it's a good
I just don't know how to move beyond that, because to your point, like the statements, like we brought that up, and she goes, oh, I see how that might help. your
And you know,
case."
there's
And then I
another
don't see her do
factor
it. Remember, she
in-
said that in the meeting when you were asking about
Let
separating.
let
those
Harold
two.
talk
Oh,
for a
I see how
second,
that might help your case.
obviously, he's a financial.
Okay, so I just want to state that the finance team has really gone through every single scenario possible. We did a 3.45%, which means that the debt is not even touched.
The existing.
mean-
debt.
The existing debt. Yeah, you wouldn't touch the fall off. So to say that you cannot have this bond, we have already proved you can't have this bond, because if you put the 3.45 levy into 1 or 2 years, preferably 2 years, so we can also fund the school and the town, it doesn't touch any part of the debt. Period. So they can go ahead and do that.
I have asked for a scenario taking into account using debt fall off.
Yeah. and-
Then if you use the debt fall off, it's 1.99%. That's if you use the debt fall off. But we've already proved that you don't need the debt fall off. So the argument they have is that we're not going to have debt capacity is absolutely false, because we have said 3.55 is there.
Well, anyway, you know what? We've
Well-
asked for scenarios. We're waiting to see what
Yeah.
we get on Monday. We don't know what we're going to get on
I
Monday.
think what we need to do is tune in and recommend after what scenarios maybe we continue to want to look at. I mean, again, I would suggest we presented options. there has yet to been a clear response to the options that we presented. We presented two solid ones. One is the 3.45, but I don't think that accomplishes the town council's goal of trying to fund it in the first year. So that would.
No, it
be the
would
second
have to be,
scenario.
it'd have to be over 2 years.
And then there's a third question, which is the ultimate debt capacity of the town, the running up of the credit card, and the ability to afford future projects, which again, I went through an entire presentation that the town manager did. I redlined it and sent it back about the fact that the debt cliffs were not where Ms. Mills said they were. And that it's very clear when we have fall offs. Not only that, is what we're actually bonding is not $89 million. So it's saying we're only leaving $10 million. Take out the 9, also take out the state share, which brings us down, what, 67?
Yeah.
So
But I thought we had.
No, it's actually 65.
our authorization is for that amount, but your actual bonded amount is different.
Oh, so we need to make that crystal clear, because I feel like there are some council members who are super hung up on this $89 million bond and the very small margin of.
Steve.
has reduced.
She reduced the 9 million.
Yeah,
did-
I was gonna
she
say,
took
she
out the
didn't
big-
do 89 million, she did what, 80 million?
81 million, because that's,
So this is, but again, it goes back to the truth and numbers.
Like all the hand raising.
All right, sorry, I don't mean to take up your time. Lee, go ahead.
Okay, one of the things about
I'm sorry, Pat.
flat budget year was the pandemic. Because they didn't need somebody down there at the beach to monitor it because it was
I
closed.
think that was the year before
That
that.
was the year before. This past year, they didn't have anyone down there.
Lee, I don't want to go down the road of the
No,
beach.
But I want you to understand, I was all over Craig, saying, Craig, look, if you don't have the money to run the schools, when the last bell rings, you better lock every school. Nobody goes into the gyms, nobody goes into the buildings for a Girl Scout meeting, 0 participation in your school buildings. Because you turn it over to your janitors and you get them done, and you get them out. And then when the bell opens up the next day, then you start again. But nobody uses it. And the problem was the pandemic came along, and so nobody noticed it because nobody was leaving their house. So the argument of can we do it or not? And then it turns out that the town had a surplus that year.
Again, I want to stick to,
I understand.
let's keep.
Okay,
We
now,
talked about finances. How
you
we make
cannot
this
do
present.
anything with that finance director until she will reveal her spreadsheet to you. I'm sorry, I don't have that information in front of me, If she is allowed to do that, if she will not share that spreadsheet with you guys to work to a common goal,
Well,
you
as I
will
said,
never have that
I'm
money.
working on it, but right now, I don't have it. So we've got to figure out ways around it. That's
There
about-
are no ways around it.
We can't focus on the things we can't do. Let's focus on the things.
You have presented everything.
I think we really have presented everything, and I think
Yeah.
the
Thank you.
spreadsheet isn't particularly helpful
Right,
for this.
let's just-
I just have one question, because I really don't know the answer to this question. Where did the $40 million number come from? Who came up with that?
I think you weren't at the meeting.
I think it stemmed from, there were individuals who had seen our consideration. And I'll put this out. I somewhat apologize for bringing it back to the committee, but I felt it was my obligation as chairperson, after speaking with Council President Dixon, to bring it back and to at least give it honest consideration, because my feeling was, I quite frankly wanted our council members to hear the committee speak in one voice when they voted that down. And I had a feeling it would get voted down because I know how hard everyone worked on it.
But who came up with that number?
It was discussed about what would, I think I had thrown out what a feasible project may look like, because keep in mind, we also have.
No. Where did the 40 million come from? How did that number come up? Why wasn't it 20 million? Why wasn't it?
So
90 million?
it was random, to put it quite frankly. What it was is I talked to Phil about a reduced project that fit within the parameters of the SBA approved.
Because the reason I bring this up is because I've heard Ms. Mills say that a couple of times. People said, what can we afford? Town council people.
That's a
And
whole
she
separate
said 40 million.
And
So
She
she
said that from day one.
She said it very,
She said that
very
from
I
early on.
don't know what the derivative of that number is.
I think it
because she
was
hasn't
debt.
proven the 89
Wasn't it the debt and revenue ratio of the town? That's what she's coming from. She said that the very first time they talked about the school bond at 89 million. She looked at her numbers and said, we can't afford it. And then, of course, if I was a town council member, I would have said, well, what can we afford? And that was the number. I think that came from that side of the street, but I could be wrong.
She's the finance director. She's welcome to suggest any number she thinks is appropriate for the council's consideration. What I would say to the council is that needs to be vetted in some way, shape, or form. Where did you come up with that number?
Well, not only that, but, town council president, I.
Call me Ian. We've been talking to each
At the
other
last
for
meeting-
10 years now.
At the last meeting, one of your requests of Ms. Mills was to go and run the figure at 40 million.
Yes, I did say that.
I'm
Yes, I
just
want,
saying.
yeah,
So-
but I wanted to see what it would look like. I mean, if we come back with all these
Yeah, no,
scenarios,
I'm gonna get to it, I promise.
yeah, if we look at all these
I think the
scenarios
exact
and the
I know the
council says
feeling.
this is not a
You're on deck.
problem, you know, the motion on the floor is the 89 million. That's the project. We don't have a project for anything else. We don't have a project.
Phil?
I was just gonna say that the smaller project is more like 45 million.
Mhm.
When Luke and I had talked, he said, what would a phased project look like? So if I took the work that we're doing at the elementary schools
Mhm.
and we did the front additions to the middle school and we did the site work and we put in a appropriate square foot number to renovate the middle school the way we want to, we got to about 45 million.
Mhm.
So that's where, so I don't know where 40 million came from. I could tell you where 45 million gets you. And the only thing I want to add to this is that this whole situation sort of breaks my heart a little bit because I have never seen this in any other municipality. And the problem is that
Welcome to Coventry.
I know, but I feel, and this is just my opinion, that this has been a well orchestrated, masterful, and strategic initiative by a contingent that did not want this project to proceed. There has been enough confusion created to this point that I feel you are doomed to fail, whether you are failing at council or whether you will fail at the bond vote. And even if council comes back with saying we could approve 45 million. To your point, there's plenty of time in the process to develop a good $45 million project. I don't know how big Coventry has made investments before of this magnitude. So it will be impactful. It could be impactful. But the problem is the confusion that is already out there is deadly, because they're going to say, how did it go from 89 million to 45 million? I don't trust this. And this is a big problem.
And to be honest with you, I'm not sure, frankly, I could even support and be out there advocating for such a project. Because I've been witness to half projects before that have been, quite frankly, we're living with the results of it. So,
Could be impacted.
and I don't think I'm alone in that, so it is what it is. But I appreciate your perspective. You've been with us the whole way and you have a unique perspective on this.
Another spreadsheet question. Is the 3% maintenance requirement built into the spreadsheet?
No.
It is not.
It's
So,
assumed that it's going to come from
Well, so
80% levy.
so that's my next question. So it's assumed that,
It doesn't exist.
right, it's assumed that we're going to somehow pay for it, right?
Absorb it out of the operating.
Right, let's just say that.
There's-
Let's
I
just
think
say
there's an
that.
assumption that at the 3% they're funding us, in theory, should the voters approve the in perpetuity payments, that we would, as a school committee, fund the maintenance without any sort of discussion about what our operating needs are now, so.
So let's say, Harold, correct me if I'm wrong, let's say it's $2.5 million Is that a round number for maintenance? Is it up?
Without our commitment.
With our maintenance people, it's.
Without our
1.5?
maintenance, with our maintenance people, it's 1.6.
Right, so let's say it's 1.6.
Yeah.
We have to A, figure out operations, B, we'd have to come up with 1.6. So being somebody who's been involved in the budget process now for a number of years, it's really hard to cut $1.6 million out of a budget, right? You can't eliminate enough people to do that because you would be
can't.
violating regulations. We already have the worst fleet of vehicles that exists.
Right.
We already have buildings that are in disarray. There is nowhere to cut 1.5. So we'd be going to the town essentially to say,
We need.
we need 1.5, and the town would have to find a way to then build that into the budget that goes before the community. My point is, you're paying here, or you're paying here, but either way, we're paying, right? And so we're either paying for a good, impactful project that's gonna have generational legs, that is gonna impact kids long, or we're gonna do 1.5 worth of maintenance Band-Aids every single year. Mr. LeBlanc brought up an excellent point. How are you gonna take care of maintenance? So that 1.5, 1.6 maintenance requirement, it would be helpful to do all these little projects, but it's not gonna be impactful. It's not gonna change the dynamic of our buildings. It's not gonna change the kinds of things that we really need to change to be, I don't wanna say competitive, but to be competitive. You wanna draw people to the community to pay taxes, you have to have good schools.
So
One thing
we,
I
I
would point out
appreciate everything you just said, but it's been said. Right?
Right.
So we had a spreadsheet on it
Mhm.
at the last meeting. I said it no less than a half dozen times in meetings to council. So I don't, the question is, does that issue exist? It's not being heard.
So that,
So
that's
what is the
the,
problem?
At the meeting we had joint, that we were sitting up there on the dais with the council, I was very passionate about the fact that we're going to be very hard pressed to find the maintenance amount of money. And that this bond, basically, there's a way to pay for that if we move forward with it. I said it very passionately, if I remember correctly.
yeah, I'm not trying to be repetitive. I guess I'm in my mind trying to justify why we're even having this conversation.
So the key is, information is not getting out. I think my frustration at this point is, we as a committee, and this is myself included, we don't have a lot of social media presence. We don't have a lot of presence with council. And I had talked about this 6 months ago, did I not? I said, we need to build leverage on council. Because I discussed with Council President Dixon, it would be better, and I hate to say this, if a roof was falling in or if kids were in a trailer right now. Because that will provide the impetus for people to get out and be proactive, but it's not. That sounds terrible.
What if the
But
floor
look,
tiles
even-
are
No, but
popping?
remember-
this is
The
so
floor
terrible to
tiles are
say
popping
right now
up.
because it's recent current events, but correct me if I'm wrong, but in East Providence High School, are there not buttons that lock down if there's active shooter?
Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
these are the things.
And those are things that they build into all the new schools now.
Bulletproof glass,
Yeah, we are not equipped for
I mean,
that
I don't want to
situation.
scare people, but on the other hand, if it is a real possibility, acknowledge this, that in 5 years, if we do nothing, we could have kids in trailers. We could have a well, catastrophic, I mean, the well at Lester is on a threat, right? There is going to be issues that are going to be extremely disruptive to the town and result in, whether the council likes it or not, everything eventually falls on council or a mayor or the leadership. The school committee somehow scapegoats a lot of that stuff because everyone just thinks the council. You know, how come you're not doing something? That is the way the political system works.
So when we get to the marketing conversation, then we need to really think about strategically what we want to do for the next 2 weeks. Because being the person who runs that, I have felt the last few weeks, I wasn't sure what the message was. I wasn't positive for what I should be putting out because I didn't want to have to reel stuff back in.
so I actually have an ask, and I don't know if you could do this, or I mean, Harold, it's better from you. But would you send an email to the committee? Can you recap what you just said about the bond and the 89 million, but really we're only bonding for the 60-something million? And then I know that you said that there was like the spreadsheet that you redlined to show like the debt fall offs. But I really feel like a sticking point with some of the town council members is that we're not leaving any room for other bonds. So could you like show us like, okay, well, right now, we're bonding at 67 million, so there's this much available, and in 5 years, there'll be this much available, or maybe there's not in 5 years, like maybe in 10 years, there'll be this much available. Like, is there just like a simple way to show that?
It's a very complicated.
I'm sure it is.
No, it is, but it is.
But can somebody dumb it down for somebody that's not in finance? Because let's be honest, not every member on that council works in finance, and I think it would be really impactful to show some of them that here's what we really have to borrow for, because I was under the impression that we needed the full $89 million,
No.
but if it's really the 60-something, well then, why are we sitting up on that
The council
and
members,
saying 89 million?
the council members do understand that, and Kim cannot send a note to all of the council
Yeah.
people.
I'm not asking
No,
her to
no,
send a message,
no.
I'm
She said to the
asking,
committee.
I'm
So
asking
you came to this.
for somebody to send it to our committee so that I have that, because I have no problem going on Monday and standing up there and saying, hey, look, I'm not in finance, this is the dumbed down version, and this is what it looks like, so I really feel that there's a misconception, I think, between that Excel spreadsheet and the 3% over time. I am not in finance. I'm confused. Kim's asking to have questions and she's in finance. I work in construction, but it does not give me any.
Christine, we have asked for spreadsheets. I've asked for spreadsheets that have
Yes,
less
but
color.
you're getting
columns.
spreadsheets that nobody here can understand. So why is anybody up on that council understanding?
Well, again, it's a tactic, right? When she walked into the first one we did together, she just goes
Correct.
like this, like
I
you
need
put that
something
in front, it
different.
confuses
You
people.
need
I
something
got 30
different.
minutes.
Kim needs something different.
Yeah.
Every
Yeah.
member out there needs something
Kind of.
different.
When I
It's sad.
posted recently on social media, I did explain that we had to authorize 89 million. We are only going 80 million. And that the reimbursement would start after we essentially complete the project in 2025.
Not even actually borrowing.
Well, a line of credit.
So this debt
Well,
service,
no,
so
but the
this is how
actual
much.
price all in, we
every year
calculated
becomes
was 67 million, that's 131 million.
And
So
so the.
that is
so what
where,
I need
and I had that on one of my.
You don't have to get a bond for 80 million?
No, because
You're telling
the
us, like, the
state
maximum
share,
bond
we
you
have to
have
bond the
to
full
give it.
project, like authorize.
You have to authorize it, yes.
You have to authorize it.
Right.
But you're actually issuing for notes, it's enough to cover our
On day
share of the
one,
project,
you can still bond.
you know. Now, I will say, it depends on
And
when the
then,
reimbursement
this
is
is-
too.
Right.
So there's some complex.
This is.
There are numbers
Broken.
that we can, because I think there is confusion on this, because at one point, I will say, I mentioned in a meeting that
Yeah,
we should look at the numbers.
right.
And Ms. Mills made a comment of, well, you know, we only have 2 million falling off. She was talking about the debt payment.
Well, this is
That's
news.
not the principal amount.
It's news to me that we would not be borrowing 80 million. We would be borrowing only 67,
That's how I understood.
67 million. This is
Your
news to
meeting
me.
on Thursday will clear this up
Yeah.
Yes.
very easily, because
Yes.
I've
Our
seen this
total-
before, it's never this complicated, never this
Seriously.
complicated.
That's why it's passed 26 times,
I tried to
26
put
times.
information.
You know,
out.
we're borrowing money in essence, but it's like my loan, right? You know, on my house, let's say I borrowed $300,000 and somebody says, well, I'll reimburse you half. I haven't put out $300,000. I'm paying it back over time. So if someone gives me half every year, I'm putting in 100, you know, my payment on $150,000 of that. So, you know, in essence, I'm obligated to pay back a certain amount of money, but the actual financials behind the scenes is what matters.
So it sounds more like the fall off could be relatively quick based on state.
Okay, so the way they look at it is you're getting your housing aid, right? That housing aid is taking out half of it. And if you look at these numbers, the full amount in principal and interest is $130 million.
Right.
But you get a housing aid is $65 million.
Sure, but So
So then what you're only paying for
I think,
is 65.
Yeah, you're paying 65, we're getting with interest.
So this
Yeah.
is. I'd
But-
like to
but in
verify
total.
some of this information.
Sure.
Only because the way I think about it, just said, like, $300,000 house. You're gonna pay half of it. For me. You're gonna pay for half of it, in the end. But I still had to get a mortgage for $300,000. And every month, we're paying off a little bit of that mortgage, and I'm paying it off twice as fast, because you're paying half of it for me.
Right.
But I still had to bond for $300,000.
Correct.
Yeah, and it's a little different because the way the state calculation allows you to subtract, like you subtract enterprise debt. and
So
things like
instead
that.
of talking it to death, I'm gonna go with what you said
Yep.
and say on Thursday, this is gonna get cleared
It
up.
will be. Steve Massaroni should have one piece of paper that would probably have,
It's right there.
it would tell you what you're gonna pay each year. It's gonna tell you what you pay each year. He's probably gonna tell you that you need some bond anticipation notes for the first few years, because you won't wanna sell the bond until the project is done as you get closer to the reimbursement, because the reimbursement won't come until you are substantially complete, which will be 2025.
Before the end of
6 maybe.
25, right?
So these are a couple of things I've pointed out at these meetings. One is, we're not taking care of our maintenance
This is from.
with just interest. Because in the first few years, we're putting a significant amount of improvement into these schools. Like, we're putting the money into the schools while we're paying the interest. We're building a middle school for the most part, and we're putting 800,000 to 1.7 million
Mhm.
into every elementary school. So instead of taking $100,000 a year, breaking it amongst 7, we're putting a significant amount of capital into each of these schools in 3 years. Like, really quickly, we're putting a lot of money in. Still doing the regular maintenance, and, kind of what we need from the school is the ability to say, and yes, we are figuring out how over time we're going to increase so that we can still be making improvements to these schools. And meeting those
The
Maintenance mandate.
maintenance mandates, there's so many different maintenance.
MMR.
Minimum maintenance requirements, yes. So, that's something that I pointed out at the meeting to Jamie, for instance, who says, we're just paying interest. No. We're putting significant money into these schools.
Way more than we've put in
40 years.
forever.
I mean,
Remember, you had the two guys from RIDE here telling you and the town council, you can't afford not to do this.
right.
That's, they stood up and said that.
Right.
Yeah.
That's about as clear as you could get.
And,
from-
and
And I
they
did
have
answer-
nothing to gain, right? They are trying to give away money to school
Seriously.
districts
Yeah.
to help their communities. And if we won't take it, they will give it to somebody else.
But we're paying for it.
And we will pay.
When we meet with bond council and Steve, the other thing we need to resolve, and this has been kicked around at the council meeting, is the bands. So there's been an assertion that the bands is what creates all this interest in this balloon payment, 2025, and it confuses people, right? As I said before, when I met with Steve Massaroni, and I was one of the few people who are still standing out of that original meeting, I quite clearly discussed with him multiple options to financing. One potential option that districts have gone for is rolling payments. It is interest only, and you roll them year to year. For the purposes of the stage 2, that's what we ran with, and that's what's been used. But when we meet with Steve, I think an important question we should talk to him about is, do we have other scenarios that we could run? And I guarantee you 100% he'll say, yeah, I can run whatever scenarios you would like, whatever makes it work. And we ran it at pulling multiple draws on the bond itself, thinking that interest rates may rise over the next couple of years.
Right.
We may want to pull some of that money early. So my point being, there's this sort of driving point that's been driven home all these bands, and it confuses people, and they're like, well, they must be quick, because I'm really confused on what band is and what that actually means. It's just a mechanism, like any other mechanism. Again, creativity and making this work is the key. Steve can assist with that. And Phil's experienced that. Steve is a very smart individual who is willing to work with whatever scenario he's directed to do.
So can I ask a question on this?
Yeah.
So This is showing our principal and interest payments. Is this middle one the one that, which one do we want to use? One is based on,
That's the original over there on the left. Well,
is with the extra 15%.
yeah, what we're gonna do is, we're gonna get Steve to just go through that completely on Thursday, so you completely understand that, because if you look at if you look at the two numbers, it shows how it splits it. It's 65 million that you actually pay in housing aid, and then it's 65 million that you're paying.
We're
the total.
paying. But my question is this, because I think this is kind of important and goes back to Christine's point. If we're paying 2.7 million in principal this year, is that increasing our allowance for future bonds? So when I pay my mortgage, when I pay the principal, it's coming off, and it makes it so that I could take out more debt.
Yeah, we're always able to
Someplace
credit.
else.
Right, my equity line can.
Right. I can take out a bigger equity line, right? So that's my question. I think in certain instances, and maybe we shouldn't be, we shouldn't just be factoring in the debt fall off from our other debt. It's the debt fall off per year from this amazingly
Correct.
large bond. So, you know, in 2026, maybe we do have $10 million right now. Let's just say that
Yeah,
that
it's a
scenario.
snapshot in time, maybe that 1 year.
Well, in a year, we're gonna have close to 13 million. And then a year after that, we're gonna have close to 15 million. And then a year after that, we're gonna have close to 17 million. Like, so the other debt's gonna fall off as well. So I'd like to see something showing, even though we're gonna be paying this $89 million bond for the next 25 years, this is how the debt falls off. This is how that works. Does every ounce of debt have to fall off for it to become, like, do you have to pay a full bond for it to become available, or is it as you pay it off, you open yourself up for more?
That's a
It's
question we
making
had
a
to.
mistake, look,
So I'll ask another question for Thursday.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Which leads me into my
That
next
would
ask.
make the most sense.
Who is from this table going on Thursday?
so I've been invited, Harold's been invited.
Okay. So can one of you on Friday send out a recap of what happened there with, again, some kind of like dollar value breakdown saying, hey, here's what we found out, so that if we choose to go on Monday and need to get up.
I'd actually like to, if it can be, if it's just factual information that we can make part of the information sent to council before Monday. Like, this is what came out of a meeting that we had.
Really good.
Is
So
what I'm
who-
hoping.
Well,
who's going to-
No, what will have to happen is, I will ask Ben to send out a message. We cannot send out a message to the council people.
Can
We-
I?
But can
I
you,
can.
Wait a minute. Luke could, but I mean, but we also feel that it's important that the council members understand that we had this meeting. So I will request that Ben send out a summary of the meeting to the council members. And then we will determine how we can disseminate it to the
Will
Poverty
someone
Building.
be
But I-
reviewing the
but-
summary to kind
yes,
of agree
right.
with
Thank you.
what it
So-
says before it
Thank you.
goes to
Will-
council?
Will it be
That's
edited
what I think.
before
I
it
want
comes
you to
out?
know, so.
Well, Luke and
I'm a
Harold, Luke
lowly
and,
PM to Alita's PX, so if we go to the same meeting, I'm the one who has to take the meeting notes.
but
She
Luke,
doesn't.
Luke and
And then
Harold,
I have
That's
to, I have 24 hours to send them out to the entire team, and they have 24 hours to come back and say, I disagree with what's in this statement.
Christine, Luke and Harold have been invited to the meeting. Unless we are told that what is discussed there is confidential, they have the ability to send out whatever
Right.
summary they want to. So it's better for them to do it if they wish than for us, as long as we find out that the information is not confidential.
Can I just say though, I
And
honestly,
Dave is shaking his head, yes.
I don't see why it would be confidential, but Ann is correct.
If I-
invited a bunch of people.
if
Don't do
I,
that party.
I don't see that-
Sorry, Lee.
well, no,
There's
my,
nothing
my
that's-
thought is, right, maybe back to
There's nothing
Phil's
personal
point,
about
there
it.
seems to be a small contingent that is going to put it down. If this meeting actually brings out good fruitful information, I do think it would be nice for council's perspective if Ben were the one who sent the summary email
That's
that
what I
actually
said.
put it in the proper light.
Yeah.
But to that end, I think it should be
But I mean,
something
we
that
will-
goes out to the
we-
entire group to say, yes, I agree with this bullet point or
Right,
not.
this is
but
what I took.
Well,
from
if
it.
he
You
takes
agree.
notes and he sends it
to
You can send it
look,
to
then
me,
look
I
and
can
then
distribute it.
Well, but that's what I mean. I think that's been part of the problem, right? You feel like you are this one guy on the street pushing this project,
Yeah.
and they're the ones who are pushing against it. I
Yeah,
feel like if there is anything to have something that is any type of a positive light come from that direction is a win and a huge help to
but-
council who is worried about
and
the
if there's anything
finance.
that I feel was left out, I can certainly.
Yeah, that's what I mean. You
say in
guys
the
work
email
together to make
that,
sure you guys agree with what those notes are, is what I'm saying, but
Well, that
I
would be
think
the
under
hope.
his cover would be
I'm
more
fine either
beneficial.
way. I mean,
I think coming from Ben would be best.
so that
personally.
would have to be directed from your end.
That's fine.
Yeah, we can do that.
So we'll, and
That's
then as long as I get a copy of that email, I can distribute it.
To all the members who attended the meeting.
Yeah, information is.
No, this is great.
I don't think there's any problem with that.
And you reached out already about Karen?
I already sent the email.
You're awesome, thank you.
As soon as you mentioned it, we did it.
That's, if I don't do it like that, Ann, a lot of stuff doesn't get done.
So.
I mean, for me, I would forget. I'm just giving mine, oh, I'm pretty big deal.
Oh, yeah.
That's what I heard.
If we're going to
That
be
keeps shocking me.
boastful.
She's a pretty big deal.
Boastful.
Well, and another thing that you unfortunately, I think you already have my cards, I'll give it to you.
Also, I can just
No
write
one
District
wants-
1 through 5 and
Well,
Hollywood.
that's
It's
kind of
the
why I
same
gave it to you,
thing.
because
Yeah,
that's
it's the
all our
same thing.
emails.
It's the
Yeah.
same
I have
thing.
the 5, everyone
Oh,
else
yeah.
has the other. Oh,
It's
I have
all
more
this.
cards.
No,
Oh, you did.
I got yours.
So it's 7:37. We've had a good discussion, I think, wondering, but I think it was a good conversation of the meeting with council and how we're going to turn this around with some positive dialogue. I think we've had the discussion, number 5, on how to do some additional fiscal analysis planning. Better inform the town council. I think we've migrated into that as part of the conversation. And I'm sorry if I seem impassioned. I want to, talking about things doesn't get them done, right? And so I'm a big believer in like, all right, let's flip this script around. Let's figure out, or every time you have something to complain about, means there's something to be done. And so the time to talk is kind of over. And you need to get motivated. So this leads me to my next topic, which is marketing. My personal belief is we still have time. We have a limited amount of time. We have very limited social media presence. Phil, if you're still on board with creating some stuff,
Yeah, Phil and I have had like a to-do list going. We just haven't been able to
So
get back
we
together.
never locked down the logo, which is not the biggest concern at the moment, quite frankly. But I do think that having some branding would help. The second thing is social media presence and developing some poignant material. So I mentioned one thing. Right now, if we do this project, it's going to save taxpayers over $20 million if we were to do this project later. Can we boil that down into a simple format that could be put on social media? Like start ticking the voters on, hey, you need to think about this because this is a one-time opportunity. We've talked about the state, you're giving your money to others in the state, but congratulations, East Providence, on a new school. I'm glad we paid our fair share to do your project. And that's a strong statement.
I don't know if this is too much for the average voter, but I pointed out, this bond isn't part of our maintenance of effort. So we could either give you the money for the minimum maintenance requirement and have it become part of our maintenance of effort, or we could pay a bond that's under the town.
Too complicated.
It's
Right,
too
I
complicated.
know,
don't
but
get it. I
I
mean-
do
They don't
feel, I've been trying
understand
to tell
that.
it to my town council.
Yeah,
members.
see, that's
I
the,
think for them, it's like, it's a big deal.
the voter, all the voter wants to know is, how much are my taxes going up?
That's all they want to know.
And just like the town council is relying upon its group to advise them, they're gonna look and see my taxes are gonna go up 120. Can I afford that? Yes. I'll vote for the school because I've been contacted, I have kids in the school, whatever.
He's absolutely right.
Yeah. No,
I mean,
understand,
that-
but I just think
And I
it's a
get, that's
big
what's
deal.
the struggle,
And
Luke,
yeah.
is are we trying to sell a tax?
We're not trying to sell it, we're trying to get close your ears, the council, we need the votes,
Yeah, totally.
right? So
So that we can
close
get
your it ears
out.
again. I
to
mean,
everybody.
one fundamental question in the big red is, are you going to be stripped of your vote? Because this is what it comes down to. Do the taxpayers get to weigh in, just like they do the financial town meeting? And those people who advocate so strongly for the financial town meeting, quite frankly, the same ones who are potentially opposing this project. So that is something that needs to be put on everyone's shoulders is, You talk about clarity of government, openness of government, and the ability for taxpayers to weigh in when it suits you. But when it doesn't suit you, now someone will see themselves as the gatekeepers. That may be a valid argument, but that's their argument to make on the council floor. That's not my argument.
Yeah, and Luke, that is an argument that is typically, that's an argument that's typically not having to be had.
Right.
For what we're trying to do, which is probably why we're all struggling on trying to market that. How do you market
I mean, I
doing
think
what you
that's
see would be
that's
the easy,
guerrilla
right thing?
approach, but quite frankly, we're there.
Yeah, no, we are, you are correct.
I have shared on my own social media page that video that was put together. Is there any way we can do another one?
Sure.
Do they take a long time? Like, is it quick? New photos that we can send out and say,
That's up to you guys. I'm sure. Phil could help out with that too.
And I know you're limiting what you can do for schools.
Right, we can only say certain things.
I'm presenting this, I'm speaking to the individual members here. Only individual thoughts. Is you're welcome to do whatever you want in advocacy.
I
We're
can't get
limited.
in schools anymore though. Like I used
If
to
I
crack
could
me up,
go-
there's
if I
areas
don't
with
send my,
buckets catching leaks in
I know we talked
Western
about it,
and, things I just
at
to
the high
crack
school
up at, but now you
but
can't even
I
really
don't
go into
send my
school, so
child
I
to
can't
middle
even
school. Do you
see it to
think
know
we
what
can
they're
go
dealing
to
with.
public
Can
schools?
I
Not
come
even
in
an
and just
option
take a
in
look
middle
around?
school?
If you- well,
It's just bad. It's
so-
bad
It's
last
only an
time.
option in middle school.
It's a charge.
But you have to
definitely
moderate
different.
charter school.
No, I mean, let's be honest, my son is in fifth grade at Washington grade school. I have no interest in sending him to the middle school in the state that I'm in. I'm terrified to send him there.
Well,
Yeah, I
Yeah.
feel bad saying it. My fifth grader is not going to the middle school. I'm going to pay money from my pocket on top of the freaking taxes I pay to live in this town to send my child to another school. If maybe by the time my first grader is there, if there's something that happens here that is
Right.
different, then she might go there. I'm not like totally ruling it out, but right now my son, he can't survive that environment. Everything about like, talk about being late. I was reading the post, Kim, that you put on way back when you laid out like the original, the long,
Feel free to share that sort of thing, if you think I'm right.
yeah,
Like, if you
yeah.
think I'm right.
Well, and when you mentioned in there, you said Elliot, he's late to class. My son will never make it to class. If he has to walk from Guam to some other end of the building, he, right, can you see, Evan? Like, there's certain things that just that building will just be bad for him personally, sadly. So it's a big part of the decision that he really can't go to school there. It's sad, but.
I shadowed a girl at the middle school, and I was on my roller skates, and she raced to her locker, and then I didn't realize it, but two of them share the same locker. So when she opened the locker up just before she had to go to the cafeteria, everything came spilling out because it's two kids sharing one locker. It was quite an adventure.
So the
Oh,
sad
yeah.
part is
There's no
once
racing.
people have
Once they
committed
leave, they're
to leave, they're not
Yes,
coming back.
my
No, that
son,
is
and I've been
true.
open on this, is not going to be in the middle school. He's already out.
Yeah.
So, and I don't think we say this, I think it's sometimes interpreted by others to say, well, so now you're telling me you're pulling your kid out and you don't care about the product? No, we care because we're on the front lines of
Right.
experiencing these
And-
issues.
If you want to reach out to the council members, kind of take your point of view of, I'm going to pay this money out of my pocket. And then add on, because I can afford to. So the people who you're trying to
I can
help,
barely afford to.
it's fine, I don't know your level as well.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, the people they're trying to help by not raising taxes on this project are the same people who are going to that middle school.
Yeah.
Because you don't have any other options.
Yeah. Yeah,
Mind you, my kid does go to that middle school, and my second kid is not going to benefit from the new middle school. But I still think it's important. I did not buy a house in a 55+ community. I bought a house in a neighborhood, and the people moving into my neighborhood, moving there because they got little kids or they're grandparents of people who live in the neighborhood with little kids. The people who might be too many for Tyoke, well, at some point they're gonna end up at the middle school. So it all, the arguments all do have kind of a, we can't fix Tyoke for them right now. We will make room for these children in a school. The middle school is gonna be where they get to eventually.
And Kim, I'm just gonna say this, you know, Phil brought up this piece about it being sad that he's never seen this in a community, but for all of us that have been around for a long time, roll back 30 plus years, and we've been going to these school committee, town council, joint meetings, and listening to this baloney that's been happening year after year after year. And it's this, there's always one common thread. It's a distrust for what schools, how schools use money and what we do with it. And unfortunately, what happens is it's pervasive. It's happened year after year for 30 plus years. And nobody is willing to stand the ground and say, you know, that isn't what's happening. And you can blame it on this administration, last administration, but the reality is in 33 years, I've had 6 different superintendents, 6. And so are they all corrupt? Are they all not managing their budgets correctly? Are they all not doing it right? Is everyone, it's just, honestly, there's
So one thing that did
just.
occur to me, kind of to go along with your point at the last town council meeting, we approved a truck. DPW needed this truck to keep,
That,
I'm just saying, it got approved. I agree with my decision to approve it.
did anybody go and say, when was the last time you bought a truck? How do you know, who's riding in that truck? Who's doing this?
Yeah, we asked a ton of
It
questions.
Oh,
happens.
yes, I said another truck.
I'm sorry, but not in the public, what they do
Yeah,
to
no, we did,
schools,
we did.
asked
not what we
8
do to
million questions
schools.
during that meeting.
We
not what we do to schools,
We
And
did
that
say that.
is, so
not what we
we
do to
have this weird
schools.
experience, and I talked to it with the gentleman who's doing our performance audit right now. I said, when Kevin came forward and said, I need this truck, we don't just do Kevin's overarching budget. Ben and Lisa are part of each and every element of Kevin's budget. So when he said, oh, how can we expect someone to hit this truck? We need it, or else we can't fulfill the services that we normally do. They were like, you're right. There's no place that we can pull the money from in the budget. We have to look at other outside funds. We support you. In the school side, we approve this and have no idea really what's going on in here. And while I think there's, you know, some separation that's probably good, I think I talked to you about this. If the budget was put together as if you were just another town department and the town had more say in it, when you came forward and said, hey, you helped us make our budget, you know we've got no wiggle room, and we had this big expense come up, help us out, they'd probably be a lot more likely to say, you're right, there's no wiggle room in your budget. But instead, for some reason, it's assumed that there's like all sorts of wiggle room. I've never come out with anything but support for the budget for the school. That's almost the issue right now, is that I agree with this project and everyone expects me to. So I fall into your situation a little bit there. But, you know, I will say to kind of take that truck, it's $175,000. And the questions the council was asking weren't, should we or shouldn't we buy the truck? Because we'd asked those questions. We needed the truck. It was, are we gonna buy it now or are we gonna buy it later? And so my argument was, why would we wait? Throw good money after bad to rent a truck for like 6 months and then still put this into next year's budget. It's the same, it's different dollars.
Same
We're adding
concept.
zeros, but it's the same concept.
But there was also the question of, if we don't buy the truck, then we have to close the transfer station down. And do we want to close down the transfer station? I'm talking about closing the transfer station.
You know,
People already think it's not open.
So anyway, we did not approve or vote the first time he came to us. We said, go back and come up with alternative plans. And so he came back with like a 2 or 3 page memo that has, okay, here's plan 1, plan 2, plan 3, plan 4. We scrutinize everything that he said. So we're not rubber stamping anything at all. We are questioning every single thing. And in some cases, people are coming back to us 2 and 3 times because we don't have enough data.
Yeah, and listen, I want to ring this in because
Yeah.
it's supposed to be a marketing discussion,
Yeah.
and I think we're kind of derailing. Some of these are school committee issues
Yes.
that I think we're gonna be meeting on as far as budget, who's can control. Some of those are state law issues. And I agree with some things that are said here, but it's not for this meeting.
No.
But I think your boiled down
I was
point
trying
is,
to
yeah, you're trying to
figure
get
out.
there, I see that.
Yes, we understand.
I think as from a marketing perspective, I do think that those are questions that aren't asked. The focus hasn't been on okay, do we kick this can down the road further? What are the implications? Again, I go back to, why are we here in the first place? If the bonus incentives did not exist, we would certainly be kicking this can down the road. So a lot of the questions for council right now is, why are we doing this in the middle of a comp plan update? Why are we doing this in the middle of, we have no CIP and everything else? Well, guess what? It is not our fault that the town, let's be frank, has been somewhat mismanaged for many years, right? We don't have a clear capital improvement plan. We don't have maybe the best budget in the world. We do have pension liability debt. So why would you entertain this now? And the reason is it's a one-time opportunity. That's the bottom line. And are you going to allow the taxpayers to weigh in on this one-time opportunity? Because if you don't, it is going to cost more money and the buildings will continue to degrade.
Well,
So
to the earlier
I
point,
just want to simplify this because then we get too
Never gonna pass.
complex. We're like, oh, 1%, 2%, this and that.
If,
What-
like, the point of it being one time, that is so legitimate, because again, if it doesn't go this way and it goes in at the smaller dollar value, it Band-Aids on top of Band-Aids on top of Band-Aids. So in addition to the actual dollars of it, something catastrophic is gonna happen somewhere. You can only get that check engine light to go off, but so many times before you need a new one. And we're gonna be there with something at one of these schools.
What happens if the mold does get so bad we have to go on trailers? Who's going to pay for it?
Has the town council asked this question? I wrote this down. What's the town council's plan on fixing schools if the bond doesn't pass?
And that
I'd like
and that
to-
hasn't
Let's
been
put-
explained, quite frankly, like there has been no alternative plan presented other than what we think the school committee can build it into their budget to.
I think,
Say,
I think the answer to that question is, some people have said, what is the school's plan, the Coventry Public Schools plan
And is it
for
that-
improvement?
this is our, plan.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just telling you, what I heard was the plan. I have to go, I apologize.
appreciate it.
But
You know,
Kim can fill me in on
anyway.
how else get
The next 7
criticized
minutes are
tonight.
gonna be all the shit.
I think you guys are doing a great job.
Yes.
I think we're holding up pretty well. But Kathy has to call me Ann because she knows, and you know, my name is Ann too. so-
But yeah, and like to your point, and for the record, not for nothing, I think people in council who have not been involved in this level, who've had this project, who have had some of the, kind of resistance put before it, it's totally, it's not to question anybody on council. You guys are gonna
No, I
be
know.
the ones who make this decision, but it's just, we just feel like the information is
I understand.
crazy.
But
we
Kim and
wanna-
I
we
were
don't
also
wanna-
on the negotiation team for the police union contract, so we've been through the
That
grinder a
fun.
few
That must have
times
been
this
so
year.
much fun.
But you ultimately don't
So, yeah,
make the decision, you just put it on the ballot.
I 100% agree. Like I
You
said,
don't make the
I
decision.
would love to see, I want the answer on whether we can put a levy forward with the legislation. I do think it's really important, Amy. I don't want to pretend that paying for this thing isn't important.
That is
And that
important.
that's my only thing that I think is up to the council. Are we gonna put something before the voters that they really can't, that we can't do? Because if we can do it, if we can financially support it, well, then it's up to you guys. If this is the project you want to move forward with. I said it at the beginning of the meeting. I'm fine with letting the town vote on that. I think we'll get a lot more people to vote than we would expect. I also think I can pass.
So
What about the budget?
at the Halloween thing at the rec center, Luke and I worked a table. Number one, many people who came through, and they had mostly young families, but most of the people who came through didn't realize the town council part at all. They're like, when do I get to vote? That's it. Like, when do I get to vote? And, we would say, well, hopefully, the vote's gonna be in March, and that kind of thing. And the second thing is, a lot of people, especially with young kids, are supportive of that because they know that their kids are gonna benefit from that project. The other thing that was pretty telling is kids who came through who go to the current school and say, wow, look at that, because we had the picture of the school and it looks nothing like what they currently go to. And so they were like, wow, that would be great. Luke would say to kids, wouldn't you like to go to a school like that? That's a big selling point.
It's definitely an impact.
Bill and Kathy, sorry.
I just wanted to say that a couple of things. I have heard this expressed, it might have even been at a town council meeting, or I heard this from a town council member, that the argument that this is a one-time opportunity. that this will, take it or, take it while it's here. The argument on the other side is, well, how do we know the state won't bond again?
Yeah.
And continue this?
So I don't have a
So-
crystal ball, that's why.
Well, exactly, but I think we need an answer for that,
Right.
because people are gonna ask that. And then the second thing was,
Well, if the incumbent wins, he's putting money into charter schools.
Well,
I don't
yeah,
know.
right, he came up with their own category, so.
I'm not a big supporter.
I will say I have discussed with the SBA about potential extensions, Mario specifically. There is some chirpings that they may extend it for 1 year.
Yeah, no,
So
Yeah.
that is probable, but that is most likely most of the extension that they're gonna give, and especially given our current tax situation going into COVID. I don't think schools are gonna be prioritized right now. I mean, I think they'd be struggling to raise revenue, especially if we have COVID. So I don't have a crystal ball, but yeah, you're right. We do need one thing I can express to the council is I did talk to SBA. They're thinking 1 year extension maximum at this point, and that's really just to clean out people they have in the queue that are behind because of COVID. So, and we're kind of there. I mean, I asked for the extension already. We're, lucky to get that.
There's another misconception out there as well, that the infrastructure bill that was passed includes money for schools, and it does not. It does not, but originally, Biden's original plan, it did. So there is a misconception out there from people at work.
I love that people
Well, wait.
are that informed, that they even are misinformed.
Well, everybody knows there was an infrastructure thing, and again, if the council was really behind this and the town was really, really behind this bond, I think there could be a case made that Coventry is going to get infrastructure money for roads and bridges, and it's not gonna be for schools. So, like I said, Biden originally did in fact have that in, the Democrats had put it in, and Biden's administration had put it in, and it got cut because the Senate wouldn't pass it. And there were some reps that thought it was too much as well. So that original bill got stripped down to a much smaller amount. Still a very hefty bill.
That's a really good point though, because, it constantly gets laid at our feet about how do we know that, well, you're not gonna get money in the future. And the truth is, you're right. There's a bill right now at the Fed level that is likely to fund other infrastructure that the town needs, and quite frankly, kind of takes the burden off this project.
And every time I hear the council say that,
But it
every
feels
time
so
I hear the
unfair.
council, people saying, we're not gonna be able to build roads, and what about this, and what about, well, you're gonna get money from the infrastructure bill.
But that is an excellent point. I mean,
Put in another roundabout at 102 where there's been 3 accidents in 10 years, so it was so necessary. We could do that.
Oh, let me
With
tell
some
you,
infrastructure money.
there was a day I was going and somebody was right behind
that was
me,
the
across,
OT.
never stopped. That's
But I think that's a really good, and again, another good marketing point that we have to say is this doesn't mean we can't walk and chew down and get everything else done in the town. This does not paralyze. There's a conception that this is gonna somehow paralyze the town.
Yeah.
Our argument is, if you don't do it, it could paralyze the town. It could, create a real situation for the future. So.
Well, and it's not, at what point do you have to, I mean, I feel like it's almost unfair to have to deal with every negative hypothetical. There's none of, it's like none of the positive hypotheticals come out and as a thing, but everyone that's presented is some type of negative, and where's your answer? There's the counter. Yeah, there's the counter to those.
What if everything works out and everyone's happy with the school and people want to move
Yeah,
to town?
then our kids will actually just be in school in a beautiful building and everybody will be happy.
I mean, people have been moving to this town in droves.
Well, they are.
Just like they are every other town, because they're moving out of cities.
Mostly, what I find is they're moving right now because the market, I always say we're kind of a victim because we're always in the middle. We're in the middle tax-wise, we're in the middle of state, we're in the middle, and right now we're in the middle of the housing market where we're fairly affordable for families. And that's why they're moving in, but yet then they get into schools,
I don't know, what these people.
right?
Yeah,
They're one of
people
them,
are seeing the schools and they're very
I feel like we're
disappointed.
doing okay, and I look at the prices of houses in my neighborhood, and I was like, are people crazy? Do you read the news?
And you know the worst part about it, like when I tell you, like I know you're gonna, Mrs., but when I tell you about the actual quality of like the teachers, the educators, everybody at the schools and how they care about these kids and what they put in, it's a shame that they have to, put in that product. My kids love going to school. They come home so nonchalantly talking about the bad stuff that happened. This toilet fell off the wall and this happened. Just do as it was the best part of your day. It was the worst part of your day. It's always something like really randomly. I'm like, really?
Love
There
to
was-
talk about the toilets overflowing.
Yeah, yes, it's just like so random, the educators, what they put into these kids and what they take from it, and we just give them nothing to appreciate.
All right, so
I have one more thing.
Go ahead.
This is a quick question.
absolutely.
So we have all this data on our schools, right? The Jacobs report and the other report about how bad off and how much disarray they need and all the work that's needed. But then I listened to the town council meeting and they talk about the Parks and Rec building and how that's gonna fall over and DPW is so bad and the town hall and all this stuff. Are there those same kind of reports on those buildings? Is there something that tells me that those buildings are in worse shape than our school system?
I think that's a point you may want to make to council. So. Yeah,
I can't wait to read your email.
But no, I think it's
I think you should write it tonight. You are full of it tonight.
And something that I think we've said, right? We have 2,000 pages of documents that supports our request. What do you have?
I can't imagine, except for this building we're sitting in. this is the
Well, I will
best.
say,
But outside of that, I suspect
every
Coventry
building,
has failed
yes.
in all of its.
Absolutely.
buildings.
I'm not saying there's
I
none of
will say
need.
though,
No,
These
but-
need is worse.
You should be afraid to do
To
that.
the point of,
We have
we
kids
have a
that-
project, you don't actually have a real project. You're prospecting a project you may have. in
Right.
front of you.
well, and another really good thing to point out is that, on the council, but the arguments have been made that we're not spending enough. Because Jacob's report shows we should be spending more on all the schools, and then in the same,
But I can't support the bond.
we're spending too much.
Yeah.
And don't worry, the middle school, according to the Jacobs report, you really are like, oh, it's high school. But regardless, we're just, there's definitely a ton of money that needs spent. Everything in the Jacob report is spit and glue. We could spend $56 million, take care of the Jacobs report. But
Yeah.
now in our today's dollars, $63 million. But we haven't made anything better. We've just.
Take them all.
We've
Read the report.
So, I think
You
that's.
should use the level listed analogy like you did in the meeting last time because it nailed it. I mean, it did.
We could just take
Let's
it
be
down.
honest, like
yeah,
the
another way,
analogy
take it
was
down
like,
another one.
So I want to zip it up on a positive note. So really, we have a few things to do. Obviously, we have our meeting, right? And we're going to push out communication to the committee. I would ask Don and Amy, really give thought to what you can do between
Well, I
now.
was gonna say, if Phil and I and Amy can get together and come up with a post per day for every day leading up to it, I think
I would say a factual snippet
Yep.
per day. like,
just to
did you
flood the
know-
market, because people will reshare that on the other pages.
Did you know that there's X amount of dollars of deficiencies in our school? Did you know that
Yeah.
the community could save upwards of $20 million?
I think we just have to be a little bit clear on what we're asking people to get involved for,
What they need
to do, and to what the result is, like,
What's the call to action?
yeah, because the call to action is just to bug their council person.
Well, I think on every one of those needs to have, like, everything, every snippet you put out has
Do
something
you
that
want to
says,
vote on
I
this?
have 2 business cards.
protect your right to vote, contact your council member now and tell them.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. We don't want them to think this is the bond.
But
But we
or-
can't tell people what to do, like.
Right.
I can.
Yeah.
I can tell people what I
Yeah.
think they
If you
should
wanna
do.
write them up and send them to me, I'll copy
Yeah.
them, post them right in.
Figure out a way to thread that in. Factual
tell
information has to
Phil
be.
Yeah,
That
factual
doesn't
information.
include
You know what?
said member
Not
from.
enough
From
color.
adding
his
to
own
it,
thing
you have a
And doing
comment.
what I need to do. So, or any members on their own
We
site.
just, we don't want to overly complicate this, because really the only thing needs to happen is you need 3 yes votes to move this forward. That's it. Because I'll tell you, when it does move forward and it bond or when the bond passes, miraculously, everybody's on board.
They're gonna love it.
I'm just saying.
There'll be a
Right.
ribbon cutting, right?
No one said no to the East Providence project.
Yeah, right, they're all.
We'll have to go into
But
some-
no
Same
one's-
thing.
But when
no
I,
one's an atheist
but
in
they
Buffalo.
should, I'm telling you, if they watch that, like to see Kathy, they're super, she was just, I just couldn't even imagine the entire process and what she went through in trying to get that pulled together. And when I tell you how that building is just like such a source of pride for everyone, everywhere I go, like at my doctor's office, my hygienist, like people I know who live there, I was gonna move, but now they got that new high school, I'll probably just, keep my house. I'll do- People are so excited.
People who
like,
don't
I'm
live
gonna
there
stay there.
talk about it.
Yeah,
Who
yeah,
don't
people,
have
my
kids
accountant who
talk
lives in
about it.
Pawtucket,
Yeah.
who's right now, her granddaughter goes to Lincoln School, she was like, I might sell my house and move these Providence. It's like,
But I
it's such a
think,
driver
but I
for the
really do
community.
think the public, people in town will be excited if it gets on the ballot.
Yeah.
And they will vote
Yeah.
yes, but that's what the council, some of the council and administration have heard. That
Go pass.
Like I said,
it'll pass. Because I don't think it's gonna be a problem, because our record in town for school building bonds, we had passed them all. It was the police that didn't pass, it was the library that didn't pass, it was a new town hall that never passed. But then that's the only reason why this, I think they didn't hear the police station with school stuff.
With senior center.
Yeah, because guess who's senior center, and that's how it got there. So I think the town side, and I can't speak for all the council obviously, but what I feel from that side is that they're afraid that if it does go on the ballot, we'll vote yes.
and I don't think the school's necessary, like I said, I think
I
it's,
think they do know this, it's necessary.
Thursday will be huge. Like I said, I don't get a feeling that there's anyone on council trying to not vote this, but they have to be responsible council members, to Kim's point. They can't allow them to vote for something that they can't afford. So I definitely appreciate the perspective and the information that's been thrown at them. And I feel like they don't have a clear picture. And I think if they walk away from Thursday's meeting and they're able to get something that's like factual, that lays out a promising plan, I don't get the feeling. I feel like they all just want to know that it's fiscally responsible for them to say yes. And I just, so, to the point of, do we go have people start emailing them, calling them? If 1 million people call them, but we can't afford it, then they still have to say no.
That's what I'm saying.
So I
all
think
it's gonna
maybe
come
we're
down to
jumping the gun a bit
Yeah.
right
the
now.
information that they have.
Well, first one, we're gonna have to fight it on a number of fronts, because again,
You are.
the information was just given. We're
That was
fighting.
when I was a child. I don't know when I was-
I think, Kim, your comment in the very beginning is numbers can be skewed
Yes.
to fit whatever scenario you want to prove.
and it's not even
And
malicious,
so,
it's
no,
just.
it isn't, it's just your mindset. And so even if you get a very positive meeting on Thursday, which says, yes, you can do it. I mean, I said that, I don't know how many meetings ago, I said, town council, if I was the president of the council, I would have said from the beginning, this is a done deal, it's done. You tell me how we're gonna do it, how we're gonna pay for it. That's what I said from the beginning, and it went on deaf ears. Because, and I said it way back during this committee meeting, when we're still on Zoom, and I said, I hate to be Debbie Downer, but this is what is going to be critical, getting it past the council. And that was after I heard Ms. Mills say, we can't afford it. That was like, that to me was like, oh gosh.
And that has arms and legs, because on social media, when people do want to push back against a project, they will reference that. The town financial person said, this is not doable.
I will say though, whenever I asked her about issues of affordability, she brings it around to bond indebtedness and different issues. So I think that's fine to have your reservations about whether this is the project the town should move forward with. I just need the financials.
If you go back and look at towns that have built schools in them and what it has done to their towns over the years after, go look at Mansfield, Mass, go look at Marlboro, Mass.
Look at Pontiac.
In the 80 and Pontiac, go look at, go look at those towns
Oh, yeah.
10 years after they've built schools, and the housing markets go crazy in those areas, because that's why people come to the areas. And it's gonna go the other way for us if we don't go in that direction.
That's happening right now, because I watch the real estate prices between West Greenwich and Coventry. West Greenwich is $100,000 above us.
Exactly.
But when you drive by their schools, They look gorgeous.
They get more schools.
When you drive by our
200,000
schools, the word blight stands out really big.
Fair comment. All right, so we have some tasks on our list. I mean, last thing I'll ask is, there's a meeting Monday night. We've all made very good points, and the council needs to get those points
What time
if
is
you're
it?
available.
Is it posted yet?
I think it posts Friday.
Yeah,
Okay.
so they'll post it, I don't know where.
Yeah, Thursday
afternoon.
Give me an idea of what time I actually show up though, because
I-
You can look
here's-
at, look at the agenda.
Yeah,
and
here's
figure
what
it
I'll
out.
do is I will
Yeah.
grab the agenda and send it out to the committee.
Yeah.
So you're aware of what time. And then I will tell you that I have a conflict because I have to be in SK for the SK council meeting. So hopefully that doesn't run too long and I can get back here by the time it's being heard to chime in. But if not, we have more than adept team to ask some questions and certainly make a case. This isn't the last meeting, this is just a progress, right? And so, I'm still hopeful we can pull the votes to keep this together. We have a project, let's just stick to it. All right,
And I think the non-elected members, like, for example, I'm gonna go to the meeting, but anything I say is colored by the bias that people see. Oh, she's been on school committee all these years. Of course, she's gonna support
But if
this.
you could get James to come,
Exactly.
that's a different voice.
Yeah, I agree. We'll see.
and it's something that.
But members of this committee who are not elected officials, I think are really part of the schools.
Mhm.
I think are much more effective in trying to, people are gonna look and say, oh, yeah, Alita, Christine, you guys aren't,
Not tainted by politics.
Yeah, so know you in different ways.
I'm working on like 10, we're gonna be chasing 10 to 12 schools over the next year and a half. Christine's gonna be chasing them too. Right now, none of them are in Coventry. Every other town is making a move. We are not, and that's one of the things.
You need to
that's
say that,
sickening me.
say that.
and we're gonna get left behind as a town. All
Yeah,
these
I
schools
told-
are gonna go up and this town is gonna get left behind.
And in November, if it's on the ballot, that we don't have a financial town meeting anymore. Oh, yes.
Man, girl.
that's what I think.
Two last administrative items, public comment, which we don't have in public here, scheduling of the next meeting, so we have a meeting of council on Monday. So I'm looking for suggestions. Do we want to meet between the two meetings, or do we want to just wait and have an after action after the Monday
I think we
20th?
make sure we get the information on Thursday to people,
Yeah.
and we make sure that it's in
Right.
bullets, and have people at that meeting point out, like, I know that this is the financial, I think that would be helpful, whether you guys want to meet or not between.
Yeah, I
Thursday
think it might be
and
more beneficial. I mean, we'll know what information to push out.
Just wanna see where those numbers are.
I think we
are.
have
We're
Yeah.
doing
to
feedback.
see.
I think it's prudent, even though we're getting into Christmas, the meeting's on the 20th, votes on the 20th. So that would be a Monday, the 21st. I would say we should meet because that's gonna be an after action. We're gonna have to decide one way or the other. Because we may get a yes vote, which case we gotta figure out how we're gonna spring after the holidays into action. If we get a no and we get some sort of direction that has to be brought back to the committee, then we're gonna have to consider that, whether, I hate to say it, but there's gonna be a serious question of whether we continue on or we disband or we move forward with
I
the
mean, I'm gonna
project.
tell you as a
No.
president, if we do another project, this is the team I want putting it together. I know it's a big ask. I know it's a huge ask, but this is who I would want putting it together. So
But let's think positive. So I'm gonna propose the next meeting be December 21st at 6:00.
Second. Is that a motion?
All those in
Second.
favor?
Oh, raise your hand.
And then we're going to adjourn. I'm closing the adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Hold on.
I'll second it.
Yeah, I'll go with
Just make sure it's on video, because Craig's gonna watch it and take the notes. So who?
Kathy made the motion, Kim seconded, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?